Chapter 1. The Unexpected Inheritance. It was a grey November morning when Arthur received the letter. The envelope, bearing an unfamiliar and strange signature, informed him that he had inherited an old house from a great-uncle he had never heard of. The idea of owning property piqued his curiosity, but also filled him with skepticism. Why would this man whom he didn't know leave him a house? And more importantly, where was it located? Arthur lived in Paris, in a small apartment in the 15th arrondissement, far from anything that resembled a family home in the countryside. A brief search revealed that the house was located in a remote village in Normandy, a few hours away by train. Without any particular attachments in the capital, Arthur decided to make the trip to see this mysterious inheritance for himself. The journey was long, and the further Arthur got from the city, the wilder the landscape became. Fields, dense forests, and eventually small winding roads surrounded by misty hills. When he arrived at his destination, the train station was little more than a stop, and he was greeted by a cold, damp breeze that chilled him to the bone. After walking a few kilometers, he finally saw the house. It was a large Victorian mansion, which must have once been majestic, but now showed obvious signs of decay. The slate roof was crumbling in places. Some windows were boarded up, and the vegetation seemed to have reclaimed much of the once tidy garden. The place had a heavy atmosphere, as if time had stopped. Arthur pushed open the heavy wooden door, and a musty smell greeted him. Inside, the mansion was even more imposing, with high ceilings, massive wooden staircases, and long galleries covered in ancient paintings. However, something was strange about the layout of the rooms. Every corridor seemed to lead to a new door, each more enigmatic than the last. That was where it all began. As he explored the house, Arthur discovered that each door was unique. Some were simple wooden panels, others were wrought iron or finely decorated with carvings and abstract motifs. He was puzzled to see so many doors in a single house, but it was only the beginning of the strange mystery the place held. Chapter 2. The Mysterious Doors. After spending a few days settling in, Arthur decided to methodically explore every room. He first opened the most accessible doors: bedrooms, the kitchen, the library. Each led to dusty rooms filled with old furniture and cobwebs, nothing too unusual. But when he reached the western part of the mansion, things started to get strange. There he found doors that seemed not to have been opened in decades, perhaps centuries. Upon opening the first one, he was greeted by a completely unexpected scene: a vast desert plain under a threatening grey sky. He blinked, certain he had imagined it, but the vision remained, unmoving, as if the door opened into another world. He stepped back, slamming the door shut. His heart was racing. What he had just seen was impossible. How could a door in an old Normandy house open onto a completely different landscape? He checked the lock, searched for hidden mechanisms or tricks, but there was nothing unusual. Determined to understand what was happening, Arthur returned the next day to explore more doors. Each one opened onto a new dimension: a dense and impenetrable forest, an ancient sun-drenched city, a stormy ocean, and even starry nightscapes with strange constellations. Arthur was both fascinated and terrified. These doors defied all logic. They didn't lead to ordinary rooms, but to entirely different worlds. Yet the house itself remained the same. Chapter 3. The Hidden Journal. Searching for answers, Arthur scoured every corner of the mansion, looking for clues about the origin of these doors. He eventually found an old chest hidden under sheets in the attic. Inside, he discovered a journal belonging to his great-uncle. What it described was even more incredible than anything Arthur had seen. The journal detailed how his great-uncle had discovered the house after a long journey to remote regions of Asia. It explained that the house itself was built on an ancient nexus, a place where different dimensions intersected. The doors were created by an ancient order of mystics who had learned to manipulate the very fabric of reality. But this power came at a price, and many had paid with their lives in their attempts to control these passages. The journal also mentioned a special door, hidden somewhere in the house. This door had been sealed for centuries and held a secret so dangerous that no one had dared open it. It was the 100th door, the last one. Arthur, mesmerized by his great-uncle's story, felt that this door held the key to all the mysteries. But he was also warned of the dangers it posed. Chapter 4. The Temptation of the 100th Door. Days passed, and Arthur became obsessed with the 100th door. He searched the mansion relentlessly, every corridor, every corner, but the door remained elusive. Yet he felt as though it was calling to him. Every night he dreamed of the mysterious door and what it might reveal. One evening, after hours of fruitless searching, Arthur decided to take a break. He settled in the mansion's vast library, surrounded by dusty old books. As he absent-mindedly flipped through a grimoire, he heard a slight creak. A wooden panel had shifted, revealing a small door behind a bookshelf. Heart pounding, he stood up and approached. The door was different from the others. It was simple, almost plain, but Arthur instinctively knew it was the 100th door. A mixture of fear and curiosity gripped him. Should he open it? After a long moment of hesitation, Arthur reached for the handle. Chapter 5. Beyond the Threshold. The door opened silently, and behind it was not another world as Arthur had expected, but a dark room, dimly lit by the flickering light of a single candle. In the center of the room stood a large mirror, surrounded by symbols carved into the floor. Arthur stepped inside, both fascinated and terrified. The mirror seemed to call to him, as if it held the answers. As he approached, he didn't see his own reflection, but that of another man. A man he recognized despite himself, his great-uncle. The voice that followed wasn't his own inner thoughts, but the voice of the man in the mirror. "I failed," said the reflection. "I opened doors I should never have touched. You still have a choice, Arthur. Close this door, leave the house, and you'll be free. But if you continue, you will be trapped here just like me." Arthur stood frozen in place, unable to move. He felt the weight of every decision he had made so far. Yet something deep inside him urged him to go further. Chapter 6. The Final Choice. The temptation to discover what lay beyond this room became too great. Arthur couldn't bring himself to leave without understanding the ultimate mystery of the house. He turned one last time to the mirror and whispered, "I have to know." With those words, the room seemed to collapse around him. The floor shook, the walls cracked, and the carved symbols began to glow with a blinding light. The mirror, too, transformed into a swirling vortex ready to engulf him. Arthur realized at that moment that he had crossed the point of no return. There was no going back.